Um, so good evening, and I'm really inspired by the resources that I've used to that inspired me to put this together, and also um, to really look at the impact of climate change and our practice, my practice, um, differently. So I have a friend who lives on the East Coast, and she sent this. She sent a resource to me, which is some of you may want to explore further because it's rich. It's comes from a woman named Jill Shepherd, and she is. It's if you go to Jill Shepherd, Herd, dash insightmeditation.com. She has done this blog, which is two-part, and this is a tiny bit of the first part. So there's just a lot of things in there. And so so that she inspired me to look at that. And then I looked at a few other things, including a talk on Zoom by Joanna Macy on climate change. So that being said, this is a lot of this is comes from these sources. And the first thing that I looked at in regard to this was a conversation between Joseph Goldstein and Bhikkhu Analayo, and it's a half-hour conversation they have just on this whole idea of how we can mindfully face climate change. Bhikkhu Analayo wrote a book, and it's available for free on PDF or whatever it is on the computer on mindfully facing climate change. So they had this conversation, and I'm not going to explain. He starts by explaining the dynamics of climate change in his book and in some of his. And there's an online course that all from Berry Center for Buddhist Studies that you can see. That's a 4-part course. And I'm not going to explain the dynamics of climate change because I have a feeling you all probably have a pretty good idea about what that is. And but what Bhikkhu Analayo said was in the beginning of this conversation, he says, I believe that we're facing the gravest crisis that this planet has ever faced. And the big question is, why are people not more engaged in seeing that this is critical? This is now we have to do something, or we had to do something a long time ago. And so what keeps people from being engaged? And those who do engage, how do we engage without burning out? Those are two kind of critical questions that come up. And it's overwhelming. I mean, one of the reasons is it's overwhelming, and people as individuals, we tend to feel pretty hopeless and helpless, like we can't take this on, how are we supposed to change anything? But the challenge is to find the balance between the opening of the heart to see the problem, to experience seeing the problem, and the balance of the stability and equanimity to see emptiness and to be able to hold both of those. So finding that balance, because one without the other doesn't work, just doesn't work. And the key to that balance really is mindfulness. So we're all fortunate that we have that tool, that training, and that we work with that all the time. And then mindfulness is the key, and it's linked to the two other kind of wings. It's interesting, uh, I've been how the talk about the two wings of the practice, but the two wings get different names sometimes. It can be compassion and wisdom. It can be mindfulness and compassion. It can be there's different ways that it's stated. But so this is kind of a three wings. I don't know, that won't work. It's mindfulness surrounded and held by compassion and wisdom. So that those three elements need to be there for us to really be able to take the kind of in-depth investigation, and for ourselves, for our own well-being, and for the well-being of everything and everyone else. So in that discussion between Joseph Goldstein and Bhikkhu Analayo, there was a interesting discussion about how compassion arises. And what they were saying is when we're willing to come very close to the suffering, to our suffering, and I think we have to start with our suffering, because if we don't come close to our suffering, it's going to get in the way. So to come very close to our suffering without actually becoming engaged in it. Because once we become really engaged in something, we're holding on to it, or we can become that tightening, that contraction can come up around it. So then that's where mindfulness allows us to keep the balance. So another way to look at that is the mindfulness of the suffering of ourselves and the world is a form of not with a no attachment, non-attachment. We don't grab on. James Barres, this is a quote from him. He says, "I wrestle with finding the balance between words that can soothe and support in facing the climate crisis, and those that challenge us to wake up and to the fact that we are like children playing with our toys without realizing that the house is on fire." And so Analayo, in his book, Mindfully Facing Climate Change, he says this, in the early Buddhist teachings of the Four Truths appears to be modeled on an ancient Indian scheme of medical diagnosis. I never knew that before. The scheme covers a diagnosis of the disease, an identification of what is responsible for the disease, a determination of the potential for recovering health, and a prescription of the required cure. Based on this precedent, the teaching of these Four Noble Truths can be understood to involve recognition of the following: diagnosis, which is the stressful repercussions of whatever difficulty one is facing; the etiology, how one is contributing to that disease through craving, through attachment; and the prognosis, the potential for reducing stress by cultivating a different attitude; and the fourth, the treatment plan, the path of practice to be undertaken to achieve a change of attitude, and a reduction of distress. So that's another the way of explaining the Four Noble Truths, but in relationship to climate change. So the diagnosis. The Pali word dukkha describes the range of experiences that are unpleasant or unsatisfactory. So I'm sure you've heard this before, but dukkha, isn't really suffering, isn't really the right word. It's the discontent, the dissatisfactoriness that's built in to our very being. So it can include a vague feeling, excuse me, of being out of touch with something, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or it can refer to this sharp, deep, intense discomfort in any of these areas. So when we're looking at this in regard to climate crisis, it's a terminal condition in that all things are impermanent, and we have reached a point where the damage is bound to cause additional suffering and destruction of our planet, even if we were able to turn the ship around tomorrow or today. There's going to be more suffering. And the etiology, the background, is interesting. The Native American elder that I was in this, it was one of the resources in that I just read, named Stan Rushworth, says, it's a predatory type of thinking that's brought us to this place. A predatory type of thinking. Joanna Macy says it a little different. She says, it's a case of mistaken identity. We thought we were consumers, and that spawned these competitive actions and practices that have taken over our culture and much of our world. But no, she says, we are life on earth. We forgot and exploited for a while. She's marvelous in her, she talks about the most difficult things and she just glows. She just is so alive with it. She's just inspiring to just watch her talk. So this is really the consequence of our actions. It's karma. That's pretty simply what we've got. This woman, Catherine Ingram, I believe she said this. She said the idea that the news describes the truth of reality is a delusion. The very nature of money is a story based on the biggest storytelling by corporations. So everything that we hear in the news is grounded in this money-driven culture. Or it's all based on not caring about civilization in favor of destruction of resources and the consequences. That's the choice that was made, and it's a really hard choice to unravel and get out of. We didn't create the conditions, but we're living with them, and we could contribute to the distress, the continuing distress, through our cravings and attachments. So the prognosis, this idea of the potential for reducing distress by cultivating a different attitude. It depends on whether we as a culture and as a people can change our relationship to be one of community as a universal force. If we can get it that we're all living interdependently, dependent on each other and every action, and every moment now. And that we're a part of and not superior or privileged to use without regard to each other and to all things. Because it's at all levels that this is going on. And you think about, all the creatures on the earth. We think about the people that are at the most vulnerable. We have to think about all of that in our choices and actions as we go along. We've got also to understand that we can't know the outcome of this. We can't not do something because we think it's too late or we can't do it. Because that, for one thing, in some ways it doesn't matter. In some ways, what only matters is that we act out of our ethical understanding. And we are, those of us who are working with mindfulness and are working with, that are here and listening tonight, we have the privilege in a way of having this understanding, of knowing that the interdependence, to know the truth of impermanence, we're still learning, but to the extent that we have practiced and seen that, we have that privilege. And so that also gives us more of a responsibility to act in our lives. So so we can't know the outcome. We've got to be okay with the uncertainty and with the emotional difficulty for ourselves and each other. Confusion and pain are normal in this context. Can we hold each other? Because that's really what we need, is we need to hold each other in the sadness, in the grief, and also in the action and what we do. That's part of the balance, is that we support each other and we do our own internal practice at the same time. This Stan Rushworth also said, he said, you can't put something back together until you see how you took it apart. And I read that, and that's a very provocative statement because we have to really look at the history of how we got here. And I like Joanna Macy's things. We made a mistake there, and when we separated from our sense of being just part of and took this superior position. So the treatment plan is that going back to our practice and the understanding of mindfulness, the truth of mindfulness, is the key. And that idea that mindfulness is linked to compassion and to wisdom. The first thing, if you take a meditation class, if you've taken one through, not every teacher teaches it the same way, but typically that's taught based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings, thought, mind, objects, and the dharmas, the truth, the teachings. So and when we start out, the very first thing that we do is we sit and we watch our breath and we watch our body and we see what happens. And for most people, pretty quickly, what happens is we experience some discomfort, pain in the knee or restlessness, but often physical pain, but it's not always physical pain. And and the practice then that we teach is to watch it, to see what the pain, to explore the pain, um, to see the dynamics of it, to see the changing nature of it, and to offer yourself compassion without clinging and without pushing away. And it doesn't last in solid form. And this is the same practice that we use with our relationship to climate change. We're willing. We have to be willing and able to um, to see it. So, for example, if I were to say to you to imagine, let's take a minute and do this. For some of you, this may not be an imagination. This may be a reality, but the experience of a forest fire sweeping through and destroying your home, or another catastrophic event just wiping things out. Just seeing how that would feel. Seeing if it's hard to even let yourself put your mind there. And when you imagine it, all of it going up in smoke or whatever, do you notice any in your body, what, a reactivity? Do you notice emotions that come up around that? Do you notice contraction? Do you notice impulses? And at the same time as you notice them, can you offer yourself compassion and understanding that all things are impermanent and it's just the nature of the conditioned world? We're in this crisis now, but this world's still impermanent. Even if we were to fix it, it's still not built to be around forever. So this truth of impermanence, which permeates everything, in some ways helps with this balance that, yes, we want to act. Yes, we want to heal ourselves and each other and support health and some some of the teachers and people that are exploring this say it's very likely just slowing things down. And it is it is slowing things down, even if we did it very, very well. But that's the action we can take. There's a little piece by Ajahn Chah talking to an aging person facing death. Even if your house is flooded or burnt to the ground, whatever the danger that threatens it, let it concern only the house. If there's a flood, don't let it flood your mind. If there's a fire, don't let it burn your heart. Let it merely be the house, that which is external to you, that is flooded and burnt. Allow the mind to let go of its attachments. The time is right. So how do we find the right path for this? What really is being asked of us is ethical integrity. And how do we find that? Well, the Eightfold Path gives us a good guidepost that will help us through that for sure. And then we each have to find this balance in our lives between meditation, nurturing ourselves through what brings us closer to the experience of peace and open-heartedness and calm abiding, and the action in whatever way we can act. And it's really important, there's not a formula for action. We don't have to, there's not a way that we should act, because each of us is in different circumstances. Each of us has taken on different responsibilities. Each of us has different strengths and different capacities. And so part of the process is really understanding where we are and what we can do, and being appreciative and grateful of what we can do and what we do, and grateful and appreciative for each other and what we do. I'm looking around the room and seeing different ways that I don't know all of you, but I know that you all are doing things. And so having gratitude for that. So, and then in our own lives, we just have to build this balance between meditation, nurturing ourselves through all the things that bring us closer to the experience of peace and open-heartedness and calm abiding, and then the action. The gratitude for being alive is a part of it. That's Joanna Macy really emphasizes that we are alive, and that is a great gift. And so having gratitude for that. She says that she believes the proliferation of anxiety and depression in this current time isn't so much an expanding of neuroses as it is a doorway to our awakening, to a vast realization of the connection to all life. Because when we get to that place of true suffering, we have a choice. We destroy ourselves in some way or another, or we're ready to surrender and to see and to experience the truth of what is. So this question, how can I help, is kind of key, and that's a question that Joseph Goldstein suggested is he uses to ask himself, and in an ongoing way, how can I help now? And it's understanding that my doing isn't dependent on changing the world or on the changing in the world. And we give up being dependent on the outcome. Thich Nhat Hanh said, what we most need to do is to hear within ourselves the sounds of the earth crying. What we most need to do is to hear within ourselves the sounds of the earth crying. Ajahn Sakito also has a book, Buddha Nature, and he says, and which is related to our relationship to the earth. Revolutions, quiet as well as violent, are part of our history. And I would hope that through participating in an outspoken way, albeit conducted with compassion, patience, and resolve, we can restore what remains of our environment. The search for new ways of existing in the world is also part of our ongoing history. With enough understanding of our blind spots and with the right kind of guidance, we may yet forge a more agreeable future. I feel that the Buddha's teaching, the Dharma, can offer at least some of this guidance. Since the Buddha addressed human nature, the magic and the muck of it in deep, timeless ways. So there's a lot of good things happening in the midst of all this. There's a lot of technology, there's a lot of dedicated people, there's a lot of angry people. The problem with the anger is that it can't be sustained and it burns us up, it burns us out. But, and it is, it's righteous anger. It's frustrating. It's so frustrating that people can't see how important it is to act. But we need to just find that balance and work with it. So I'm just about ready to open this up. I have a poem. I have two poems, but I think I'll read you the first one and then I'll open it up for discussion. This is from Joanna Macy's, also as in addition to being an activist and a Buddhist and wonderful person, she's also a great she loves Rilke and she loves to read Rilke's poetry, and she reads it so beautifully. So this is not her, this is me reading it. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water speak, I am. Okay. So I'd like to open this up and now Robin is gonna kind of lead this.
Yeah. So my name is Robin. I'm staff here at Mountain Stream. And does anyone in the in-person audience have a question or a comment? Awesome. And just remember to state your name.
Hi, this is Virginia. And thank you so much for opening the door on this topic. It's a really, it seems very big and very alive. And it's something that weighs heavily on my heart. And it brings up the gamut of my emotions. There's deep sorrow, and there's that anger, righteous anger, and fear and concern and worry about, for not only myself, but my especially my grandchildren and the creatures of the earth. And so it's really pretty loaded. And, there's a personal aspect in that I live at 3,500. So that the climate change is already affecting our winters. We had a really severe winter. So my mom and I were snowed in, kind of stuck for 2 weeks and with no power. And so it's, the change is also very palpable and real. So I'm just looking at the edge of letting myself really feel the sorrow and the emotions that come with it, but not, I forget how you languaged it, but not indulging it too far that I'm not functional. Um,
that is the the what the practice is about finding that edge where you can be with it, you can see how it feels, and you cannot plunge into it, but hold it in this idea of spacious interconnectedness. We're all in this boat together, and so yeah, so finding that balance is the practice.
that's right. And the balance of also not going too transcendent, or resigned. So just
No,
it's keeping a balance point.
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen, but we can do what we can in this moment.
And I like the question too about what can I do now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How can I help?
Thank you.
All right. Anyone from the virtual audience have a question? If you do, you can, it looks like Marie might have a question. She unmuted herself.
Hi, very observant. Maeve, thank you for this topic because I think, in one sense, it's the reality, and I think it's wonderful as much as we can apply the practice to the realities of life. Number one, I appreciate you discussing this, and two, just by discussing it, I think is what we can do. I mean, as far as, because there is a lot of uncertainty and trepidation and mixed feelings about climate change in our culture and stuff. So bravo for the more it's discussed, the more it's a reality, and I like to think, like the butterfly effect, it's, anything that we can contribute, hopefully the wings of a butterfly can create a tsunami. Well, not literally, we don't want that, but the opposite of tsunami, just so thank you, because I just think it's so needed. And the resources, I was listening to all the names of the various people you were mentioning, and again, it's educating, it's, just bringing awareness is so necessary, and thank you.
You're welcome. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we open up, the more we are, because there's this inclination. It's too painful. I don't want to go there. The more we open up, it's kind of like treating a wound that we are we feel activated. I know that's true for me, that just kind of really exploring it, really looking at all of it, all the different points of view, using my practice to hold it all and to this balance. It just feels much better than just kind of suppressing it and trying to find something to distract.
Thank you, Marie. All right, we got a question over here.
Thank you, Robin. I'm Merle.
Hi.
Nice to see you in person.
Mhm.
I'm a little confused. You said to open your eyes earlier, and then I saw Ajahn Mun, and I'm reading a little bit of I Am That right now, and so I'm kind of I'm not. I was telling Ken Bradford yesterday that, you know, 16 years ago, I listened to the Dalai Lama chant where I birthed my third daughter, and was in great spirits all the way through for 2 days. So it's not like I'm totally unfamiliar to Buddhist teachings, but I'm unfamiliar except the last year to the practice. But I'm reading, multiple books like Start Where You Are by Pema. And so something that John Travis had said about Ajahn Mun is that there's not many books written about him, and that, he would only somewhat be seen and come out of the forest, and that Ajahn Chah had spent some time with him, and there wasn't much conversation. It was just a profound experience. And then in I Am That, I mentioned yesterday to Ken that it's a question and answer book. And so the question was to, I don't know how to say his name, sorry. And I Am That. Nisargadatta. Nisargadatta. The question was, why does my world look different than yours? And the answer was from him. I'll get better about it. From him was, I don't see anything wrong with my world. So I'm confused. Not that I don't. Gosh, I just went and stopped and watered my friend's garden, and they're neglecting the cats next door, and I'm picking burrs out of them, and one of them's got a missing, and I'm allergic to cats. One of them's got a missing toenail that just got pulled out, so I was trying to clean it. But anyways, not that I'm ignoring things. I'm just saying that I'm a little confused by that, because it almost seemed like what he was saying is that this is all how it works. This
Mhm.
existence. This is, nothing's wrong here. We're making it wrong by exaggerating, possibly. Not you. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna let you speak on it because you have more experience and more practice.
Well, one of the things I would say about nothing is wrong is that why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is what's making this happening? Why is this supposed to be happening? Because it is happening. So nothing is wrong. Nothing. It's karma. It's the results of action. And speaking of Ken, we try to, this practice of Tong Lin is really partly what I'm talking about. It is a different way of doing this, of being able to hold the pain, but not you don't stop there, and you release it out into this, and you work with this clearing and letting it out, because the pain is there. The problem, the problem, it's a problem, it's an issue, but it's not wrong. It just is, and our process is to work with that. So subtle words, are a little bit, can be confusing.
Yeah, it seemed like he was just totally let off the hook.
Thank you, Meryl. Anyone from our virtual audience have a question? Oh, Molly, go ahead.
So, what was the lady's name that was just speaking? I forgot her name.
Meryl?
Meryl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I really relate to like the things that Meryl says sometimes. And like, I just wanted to offer something that I don't know is helpful, and maybe you can talk about it too, Maeve, is sometimes for me, like the whole idea that nothing is wrong, like that's very, very philosophic, and that may be true, but it doesn't mean like that it feels good. It doesn't always feel good. And I found that with my own personality and my own, journey, that part of my personal challenge in working with it is not doing anything. I'm a very action oriented person, and I feel things strongly and I have strong energy. So for me, the challenge is in just the holding and not changing or not doing. And not that I mean, maybe later I'll do something different. But just trying to let it be as it is. And eventually through that experience getting to a new place. And that's why it's not wrong, because there's all these little components that go together when the time is right. That's what I'm hoping for. But anyway, it's just really like just not doing is part of the holding for me. It's not, but it's not comfortable. There's times that it's very, very uncomfortable. So what do you think about that, Maeve?
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. Each of us has to kind of understand our own process, ourselves. You know, the more we pay attention to what brings us alive, what brings us inspiration, that what brings us closer to that sense of that balance, that middle line. That's what we do, you know. And if we, so the idea of wrong is just, that's dukkha. We want it different, you know. We want it to be something other than it is. And once we do that, we're off in la la land, because it is what it is. So that's the place to start. And whatever arises from that is what should be our guidance.
Thank you.
I think we'll have time for one more question.
I'm Vivian.
Hi.
Hi. So I am a therapist and have worked with children for a number of years, and I don't anymore because it was too hard. But when you said, what can we do? And I realized I gave up kind of a aspiration to open children up again to the wonder of nature. And one of the things that's very sad to me, including with my own grandchildren, is that although it's natural in children to find that wonder, they are co-opted right now by media, video games, TikTok, all that stuff. And it's very hard to pull them away from that and bring them into the natural world. I don't know what the question is exactly.
Speaking the truth, that's
I guess, you know, it just seems like if that can't happen, if children can't see the world and feel a part of the world in that way, you know, I guess what happens to me is hopelessness, anger. I don't feel a lot of compassion actually around the whole subject. So when you brought in the idea of compassion, I guess that's my question. I don't know how to find it. I feel, and I feel like something has to happen. And the only way that it can happen is if we have maybe anger, like to move us or something. I don't know what my question is exactly, but that's it. All I'm going to say.
Two things about that. One is that is very true, and it's a dilemma, and that's this you know, that's the mistake. Our culture's been co-opted by this consumerism, which is reflected in all those things. And so you can only do what you can do, but I think that idea of unraveling and figuring out uh, points, with your grandchildren. I have grandchildren too, and just you have to be a model, and that's the best you can do with all those people around you. And the other thing about about this talk is that the woman that did this, there's a whole second part to this blog that I will look at next, and maybe next time I give a talk on Monday night, or we can explore that. But that's more on the action that we can do and the other side of it. But but we have to start here with our own selves, our own compassion, our own, and to understand that there, conditions have led to this. Conditions always lead to this. So, and a lot of people are confused and anxious and mistaken, and they're seeking whatever they can to comfort themselves. But we can only do our part. We can't look at the outcome. We can't know what the outcome is going to be. Just, it starts with us. I want to do a little metta. There's this poem. I'm trying to decide whether I should read you this poem. It's another Rilke poem. I think I will, and we'll just do a really quick metta. It's called Dear Darkening Ground. Dear darkening ground, you've endured so patiently the walls we've built. Perhaps you'll give the cities one more hour and grant the churches and cloisters and those that labor, let their work grip them another 5 hours or 7 before you become forest again and water and widening wilderness. In that hour of inconceivable terror, when you take back your name from all things and give me a little more, just give me a little more time. I want to love the things as no one has thought to love them until they're worthy of you and real. So that's another little angle on it, that give the earth back to the earth. So here's my wish for us. First of all, that we may treat each other and ourselves with warmth and kindness and friendliness. That we may do our best to stay open-hearted and open-minded. That we will enjoy and appreciate and have gratitude for our life, for the things we have been given, that we will enjoy our life. And at the same time, that we will have the strength and the courage to move and act in ways that benefit all beings. And that we may, through that process and through that balance of caring and practice and action, wisdom, mindfulness, and compassion, that we may find true happiness and we may be all free. And as we wish these things for ourselves, may we wish them for all beings everywhere on this earth and beyond, May all beings everywhere be happy, be at peace, and be free. Om.